Ecuador's President Guillermo Lasso signed a decree dissolving the Congress in the midst of the impeachment trial against him under corruption charges. In France, the prison sentence imposed of 3 years on former French President Nicolas Sarkozy for corruption and influence peddling in the wiretapping case was confirmed. And also in Sudan, different factions and nations continue providing humanitarian aid and evacuating civilians while the fighting between the army and the paramilitary group Rapid Support Forces persists. Hello from the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba. This is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are our news. On Wednesday, Ecuador's President Guillermo Lasso addressed the nation and announced that he had signed a decree dissolving the Congress in the midst of the impeachment trial against him under corruption charges. Under the decree 148 of the Constitution, dubbed Cross-Death, the executive power dissolves parliament, prompting snap elections, as both branches of government cease their functions. In an official statement, Lasso alleged political crisis in the country and internal commotion as the main reasons behind the decision. With its decree, the electoral authorities must call for snap polls within 7 days. On Wednesday, there were also reports that the staff working in the Legislative Palace was evicted by the National Police, while Lasso made his announcement. President Lasso is accused of alleged embezzlement in the management of the state-owned shipping company Flota Petrolera Ecuatoriana, better known as FLOPEC, and was under impeachment trial as Congresspersons started with the prosecutory stance of the trial and presented their evidence. We move on to other topics. On Tuesday, Paraguayan President-elect Santiago Pena met with the President of Brazil, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. Both presidents expressed their optimism about the demands of the European Union and ratified the trade agreements signed in 2019. During the meeting, Pena emphasized both countries support the agreement between the European Union and Mercosur, which includes Argentina, Brazil, and Uruguay. He also expressed his common position with Brazil about some restrictions, mainly in the environmental terms, which are very hard for a region of the world that needs to develop. The meeting also reviewed the main issues on the bilateral and regional agenda, including cooperation on the Itaipu hydroelectric dam, which is jointly owned by Brazil and Paraguay, as well as the continuity of the infrastructure projects and the fight against transnational crime in border areas. The Vice President of Argentina, Cristina Fernandez, ratified that she will not run for the presidency in October elections this year. Likewise, she denounced that the proscription attempts that target her are not against a person but against Peronism. Through a letter published in her social networks, the former president explained that her decision not to head a presidential candidacy seeks to avoid falling into a trap into which they want to lead her. She also emphasized that this measure seeks to confront a sector of the right wing whose only proposal is to take away rights. In this context, she reiterated that Peronism continues to be the political space that guarantees the defense of the interests of all the people and the nation. In Cuba, the General Director of the Consular Affairs and Attention to Cubans Living Abroad of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ernesto Soberon, informed new migration measures that will take effect on July the 1st. According to the official, the new migration measures are part of the updating of the country's migratory policy in favor of family relations. Soberon clarified that the measures were taken according to the criteria of Cubans living abroad. Among the measures announced are the extension of the validity of the passport, the elimination of the extension of that document, and the equalization of the time of stay in the island for Cubans living abroad with that of their family members and foreign spouses and children during their stay in the country. Let's move on to Venezuela. There, the National Assembly approved the law for the protection of the assets, rights, and interests of the Republic and its entities abroad. Its main objective is to safeguard the nation's assets. The law was unanimously approved in the second discussion. After this, the President of the National Assembly declared its approval and ordered to send it to the National Executive for its enactment. In this context, the President of the Permanent Commission of the Internal Politics, Deputy Diosdado Cabello, informed that this measure will complement the law of extinction of ownership approved last April 27th. In the debate, Deputy Cabello emphasized that the law will be applied to anyone who participates directly or indirectly in the theft or robbery of the nation's assets. Let's take a short break. But remember, you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. On Wednesday, the prison sentence imposed on the former French President Nicolas Sarkozy for corruption and influence peddling in the war-taping case was confirmed. In the decision, the magistrates imposed 3 years of imprisonment, including 1 year of mandatory imprisonment. However, according to the court, the former head of state will be able to serve his sentence under house arrest and with an electronic bracelet. Sarkozy was found guilty of a crime committed in 2004. According to the sentence, he used his influence to obtain benefits in another case. Following Wednesday's ruling, his only remaining option is to challenge the ruling with the Supreme Court of Justice in a term of 5 days. Now we move on to other topics. On Tuesday, the Russian Defense Ministry said that the Russian military destroyed a US Patriot air defense complex deployed in the Ukrainian capital, Kiev. The complex was destroyed during a high-precision strike carried out on Tuesday night in the Kinsal hypersonic missile system. The ministry also noted that Russian air defense systems over the past 24 hours intercepted 7 long-range Storm Shadow cruise missiles of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. In addition, the Russian military managed to intercept 3 U.S. HARM anti-radar missiles and also 7 HIMARS multiple rocket launcher projectiles. Over the past day, the Russian military has also destroyed a total of 22 Ukrainian UAVs in several areas of the Donetsk People's Republic, the Lugansk People's Republic, as well as in the provinces of Zaporizhia and Kherson. And Russia's defense minister, Sergei Shoigu, said Kyiv's statements about 6 Russian Kinsal hypersonic missiles allegedly shot down by its air defense system on Tuesday are not true. The official also said that the number of Kinsal missiles allegedly intercepted by Ukraine exceeds 3 times the number of those launched by Russia. The Kinsal hypersonic missile, with a range of 2,000 kilometers, reaches a speed 10 times faster than the speed of sound and can evade all existing missile shields. The state-of-the-art missile is designed to destroy aircraft carriers, destroyers, and other types of warships. And the Council of Europe summit in Iceland approves the creation of a registry of damages aimed at forcing Russia to pay for damages caused to Ukraine. The idea is that Russia should be held accountable for what they call war crimes in Ukrainian territory. The Council's Secretary General Marija Peshinovic-Buric had earlier called for Ukraine to take center stage at the meeting and said it was vital that Moscow be held responsible for the death and destruction caused. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Volodymyr Zelensky addressed those present by video link and received a pledge of more military supplies from Germany, France and Britain. London and Paris, on the other hand, said they will also train Ukrainian fighter pilots. Just 1 year before Russia was expelled from the European Council, and since then there has been no stopping of sanctions on the Eurasian nation. This way, and far from promoting a peace negotiating scenario, the West has continued its economic and political grip against Russia. In Germany, police forces suppressed pro-Palestinian protests in the city of Berlin. According to local media, the agents attacked the demonstrators with tear gas as they were commemorating the 75th anniversary of the forced expulsion of some 750,000 Palestinians from their homes. The demonstrators also prevailed in the streets carrying the traditional Palestinian headscarf, the kufiya, Palestinian flags, and posters recalling the sacrifice in the struggle for freedom. Although the commemorative events were held all over the world, the German government, for the second year in a row and under Israeli pressure, banned any event in remembrance of the ethnic cleansing and the destruction of the Palestinian society in 1948. And China's Defense Ministry spokesperson, Colonel Tan Kefei, said that an increase in exchanges between the Armed Forces of Taipei and Washington is an extremely wrong and dangerous move. He also stated that the Chinese military continues to strengthen military training and preparations and will decisively suppress any form of Taiwan independence, secession, along with attempt at external interference, and will firmly defend national sovereignty and territorial integrity. Tan's comments were in response to a question about reports that the U.S. President Joe Biden is preparing to approve a $500 million arms sale to Taiwan, as well as the dispatch of more than 100 military personnel to evaluate training methods. TeleSUR English continues to grow. You can now tune in from 33 different African countries using StarSat. Dial 461 and enjoy our Latin American alternative broadcast. One final short break and we'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. In Sudan, on Wednesday, local media confirmed that different nations continue providing humanitarian aid and evacuating civilians, while the fighting between the army and the paramilitary group Rapid Support Forces, which started last April 15th, continues. On Tuesday, a Qatari and Egyptian military aircraft loaded with tons of humanitarian and medical aid arrived at Port Sudan Airport. The supplies arrived at a time when the number of dead from the clashes has risen to 822 and more than 3,200 wounded, according to the latest statement issued by the Union of Doctors of Sudan. In other parts of the United Nations Office for Humanitarian Affairs also pointed out that the conflict has left 936,000 people displaced. On Tuesday, the executive director of Education Cannot Wait, Jasmine Sharif, announced a first emergency response of $3 million to support the refugee situation in Chad's border regions with Sudan. The funding will provide access to safe and protective learning environments for incoming refugee children and support host communities. The new grant brings ECUW's total investment in support of vulnerable children's education in Chad to more than $41 million. Since the conflict conflict erupted in Sudan on April 15th, over 200,000 people have crossed the borders to the Central African Republic, Chad, Egypt, Ethiopia, and South Sudan to flee the violence. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees estimates that this number could reach 860,000 because of the escalating conflict. In Senegal, at least 3 people died during the protests supporting opposition leader Ousmane Sonko before he was supposed to attend a since-postponed rape trial in a court in Dakar on Tuesday. The Interior Ministry reported that 2 people were found dead in Dakar in Ziguinchor after the protests, and 1 police officer died when an armored police car accidentally hit him. On Monday night, buses were burned, shops were attacked, and people clashed with police in the capital and in Sonko's hometown during violent demonstrations. Sonko remained in Ziguinchor, where the unrest started when his supporters tried to protect him from a possible arrest to force him to be present in court. The politician denies the charges and said there was a plot to remove him from the presidential race. And funerals were held on Tuesday in Iraq for 78 people killed by the Islamic State group in 2014 and uncovered in a mass grave in one of the terrorist group's worst atrocities. In June 2014, the Islamic State members attacked Badouche prison and freed the inmates before forcing around 600 mostly Shiite prisoners into a truck, driving them to a ravine and shooting them dead. 78 of them were laid to rest in Baghdad and in the Shiite holy city of Najaf in the central Iraq. DNA testing was used to identify the remains of hundreds of people slain by the Islamic State after their recovery in 2017 at the grave site on the outskirts of Mosul in the country's north. Now we move on to other topics. In central Somalia, devastating flooding has left over 200,000 families displaced in Beledweyne, in the most densely populated city in the region. A spokesperson for the Somalia National Disaster Management Agency said at least 5 people, including 3 children, have been killed. The UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs reported that more than 460,000 people had been affected nationwide. Rising water level forced a number of key facilities, including government offices at the town's main hospital, to close. Locals said this is the worst flood they have ever experienced due to its scale and the property damage caused. If the floods continue, people fear a cholera epidemic and malaria outbreak.
It was very difficult for me to walk this morning because of the amount of work. I used to be able to walk through it before, but as you can see, the river has reached my waistline, and this situation is getting worse as the amount of water increases. And just the other night, it was reported that one of my neighbor's house was submerged by water. Having walked through this street a number of times today, yesterday and the day before, today was the worst, and every time the flood is increasing.
Farmers mobilized in Sri Lanka on Tuesday, a day after a herd of up to 50 elephants rampaged through crops fields. Enraged villagers stormed a remote government office in Sri Lanka on Tuesday, demanding action as a consequence of the largest incident involving protected animals in recent times, according to local farmers. Elephants devoured nearly half their crops in 7 villages in the island's north. In Sri Lanka, elephants kill about 50 people a year, and farmers shoot electrocute or poison more than 250 elephants. Oh my God, these animals are considered sacred in Bari's majority Sri Lanka. Convictions for killing them can, in theory, lead to death penalty, although prosecutions are rare. Chief Officer of Mahashwilashiya stated that wildlife authorities were planning an elephant drive next week to push the herd back to Wilpadu National Park. On Tuesday, Sam Altman, the chief executive of ChatGPT's OpenAI, told the U.S. lawmakers that regulating artificial intelligence was essential after his chatbot stunned the world. The lawmakers stressed their deepest fears of AI's developments, with leading senator opening the hearing on Capitol Hill with a computer-made voice sounding remarkably similar to his own, reading a text generated by the bot. Altman testified before the U.S. Senate subcommittee and urged Congress to impose new rules on big tech, despite deep political divisions that for years have blocked legislation aimed at regulating the internet. But governments worldwide are under pressure to move quickly after the release of ChatGPT, a bot that can turn out human-like content in an instant, went viral and both wowed and spooked users.
OpenAI was founded on the belief that artificial intelligence has the potential to improve nearly every aspect of our lives, but also that it creates serious risks we have to work together to manage. These companies, I think there are paths to the US setting some international standards that other countries would need to collaborate with and be part of that are actually workable, even though it sounds on its face like a impractical idea. And I think it would be great for the world.
And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.